The first bullet struck the conservatory glass at 2:17 inches the morning. It did not break. The old pane shuddered beneath the impact, sending a bright silver fracture across the frost, and Dr. Elara Voss dropped to the stone floor between rows of sleeping orchids. For one suspended second, the mountain became silent. Then the second bullet came. It punched through a lower panel near the eastern wall, spraying shards across the dark soil and sending a row of clay pots crashing onto the flagstones. Somewhere outside, tires spun against snow. Men shouted in Italian. A woman screamed once and then stopped. Elara pressed both palms over her ears. Her breath vanished. The conservatory stretched around her like the skeleton of a cathedral. Black iron arches, frozen panes, moonlit leaves, and hundreds of rare plants she had spent 7 years bringing back from the edge of death. Usually, the glass house quieted every frantic corner of her mind. Tonight, it had become transparent. Every shadow outside could see her. Every shadow could enter. She crawled behind the central planting table, knees cutting against broken glass, and forced herself to look toward the western doors. A man stood there on the other side. Tall, motionless, black overcoat open beneath the falling snow, blood darkened the white shirt beneath his jacket. A pistol hung at his side. His face was hard enough to belong on a coin, severe cheekbones, dark hair wet with snow, eyes fixed not on the gunman moving through the trees but on her, Dante Moretti, the man half of Europe feared, the man whose enemies had found her because she had saved his life, the man who had spent the last 13 nights sitting in a black SUV beyond her glass walls, watching over her without stepping inside. He lifted one blood-covered hand and placed it against the door, not opening it, never opening it. Elara. She could not hear him through the storm, but she saw the shape of her name on his mouth. Behind him, a figure appeared between the pines. Dante turned and fired once. The figure dropped into the snow. Another bullet shattered the lamp above the doors, plunging him into darkness. Elara's body locked. Her vision narrowed. The distant shouting became the roar of another crowd. Another night, another moment when hundreds of bodies had pressed against her and there had been nowhere to breathe. She could not move. Dante looked back through the glass. Even in darkness, she could see his eyes. He did not gesture for her to come out. He did not order her to open the door. He lowered himself slowly onto one knee outside the conservatory, placing his body between her and the woods. Then he put his gun across his thigh and stayed there in the snow as bullets struck the iron frame around him. He had come to drag her away from danger. Instead, because she could not leave, the most powerful criminal in Europe had chosen to remain outside and bleed. 3 weeks earlier, Elara had not known his name. She knew plants. She knew the difference between monkshood and larkspur by the shape of a single leaf. She knew which orchids mimicked female insects to attract males and which alpine roots could slow a heart until death looked like sleep. She knew that certain species survived winter by withdrawing everything tender beneath the soil. People called this dormancy. Elara called it wisdom. Her conservatory stood above the village of Valenne, at the end of a private mountain road that disappeared beneath snow for half the year. It had once belonged to an eccentric duchess who imported tropical plants to the Alps and hosted winter masquerades beneath the iron rafters. By the time Elara found it, the glass was broken, the heating system had failed, and birch roots had split the tiled floor. She restored it alone. The eastern wing became her laboratory. The western gallery held medicinal plants. The upper balcony became a bedroom screened by climbing jasmine. Beneath the central dome stood an ancient stone fountain that no longer carried water, surrounded by the plants she trusted most. The village believed she was mysterious. The truth was less romantic. Crowds terrified her. Not discomfort, not shyness, terror. 8 years earlier, during her first public research lecture in Geneva, a fire alarm had triggered a panicked evacuation. Hundreds of people had surged toward the exits. Elara had fallen beneath them. A colleague had died beside her, his hand trapped in hers until the pressure of bodies separated them. She survived. Her nervous system never understood that the emergency had ended. In markets, her heartbeat became violent. In elevators, her lungs closed. At conferences, walls seemed to lean inward. Strangers moving too quickly around her could send her body into the past before her mind understood the present. So she built a life where nothing approached without warning. The grocery driver left supplies beyond the gate. Her assistant, Mara, visited twice a week and announced herself from the road. Her father called on Sundays from Boston and pretended not to worry. The plants kept their roots where she placed them. It was enough. Until the night, the black cars came. They arrived during a blizzard. Elara saw headlights crawling up the mountain road while she was cataloguing specimens from a rare Alpine flower known locally as the widow's bell. The flower had not bloomed naturally in Switzerland for nearly 60 years. Its deep violet petals resembled small bells, and its roots contained a compound capable of disrupting the heart's electrical rhythm. In the right dosage, it could treat certain neurological conditions. In the wrong hands, it could kill without leaving an obvious trace. Elara heard the crash before she saw it. A black armored sedan struck the stone wall beside her gate. A second vehicle stopped hard behind it. Men spilled into the snow, shouting in Italian. Her first instinct was to extinguish the lights and hide. Then the rear door of the damaged sedan opened, and a man fell into the snow. Even from inside the conservatory, she saw something unnatural in the way his body moved. His limbs were rigid. His left hand trembled violently. Foam touched the corner of his mouth. Poison. Elara stood frozen beneath the dome. Outside, armed men lifted him. One spotted the conservatory and ran toward it. Her pulse exploded. The man struck the door with his fist. "Doctor!" he shouted. "We need a doctor." Elara backed away. "I'm not a physician. Our doctor is dead. I can't help you." The man turned toward the others. Through the glass, Elara saw the poisoned stranger convulse in the snow. She saw his hand. The fingers were tightening inward in a pattern she recognized from laboratory exposure studies. Not cyanide, not strychnine, a plant alkaloid. She crossed the floor before fear could stop her. "Bring him to the service entrance," she called through the glass. "Only 2 people. Everyone else stays beyond the gate." The man stared at her. "Now," she snapped, "or he dies outside." The service entrance opened into a narrow decontamination chamber, small enough that Elara could control who entered. 2 men carried the stranger inside. One was broad-shouldered and gray-haired. The other wore a bloodied medical coat. The stranger's eyes were open but unfocused. Up close, he looked younger than she expected. Perhaps 38. His skin had gone pale beneath the dark shadow of his beard. A black signet ring marked his right hand. "What did he ingest?" Elara asked. "We don't know." "What did he eat?" "Dinner at Chateau Aveline." "What did he drink?" "Wine. Mineral water. Flowers?" The gray-haired man stared at her. "Were there flowers on the table?" "Yes." "What kind?" "Purple." Elara's blood chilled. She pulled on gloves and pried open the stranger's mouth. His pulse stumbled beneath her fingers. "Widow's bell," she whispered. "You know it? I grow it." Both men reached beneath their coats. Elara stepped back sharply. "If I wanted him dead, I would let the poison finish." The gray-haired man's gaze hardened. "Save him. That compound has no commercial antidote." His expression became murderous. "But I have been developing one." She moved. For the next 11 minutes, fear disappeared beneath knowledge. Elara crushed activated charcoal, prepared an intravenous solution from a synthetic binding compound, and mixed a small measure of atropine with an experimental root extract. She ordered the men to restrain him as his body seized. The poisoned man woke once. His hand locked around her wrist with shocking force. His eyes found hers, dark, controlled even at the edge of death. "Who are you?" he rasped. "Elara Voss." "Why are you afraid?" The question struck harder than his grip. "I'm not. You are trembling. So are you. Something almost like approval, moved through his unfocused gaze. Then his heart stopped. The monitor flattened. The men shouted. Elara drove her fist against his chest, injected the compound, and began compressions. Once, twice, 3 times. The man beneath her remained still. "Come back," she whispered. His heart answered. One brutal beat, then another. The grey-haired man lowered his gun. Elara had not noticed he had drawn it. By dawn, the storm had buried the vehicles. The stranger slept on a narrow medical cot in her laboratory, surrounded by white orchids and coils of clear tubing. His men waited outside, because Elara refused to let more than 2 people remain within the conservatory. The grey-haired man introduced himself as Enzo Bellini. He did not explain who his employer was. He did not need to. At 6 in the morning, Elara found the name on her emergency radio when the international news mentioned the disappearance of Dante Moretti after a charity gala near Lake Geneva. Dante Moretti, head of the Moretti organization, owner of shipping companies, hotels, private security firms, and enough invisible influence to make governments cautious. Alleged heir to one of Italy's oldest criminal dynasties, never convicted, rarely photographed, feared by everyone who spoke his name. Elara stared through the laboratory glass at the sleeping man she had revived. His hand rested beside him. The tremor had not entirely stopped. Enzo watched her from the doorway. "You know now. I know what the news says. The news knows almost nothing. I prefer it that way." When Dante woke, the first thing he did was try to stand. His knees failed. Elara caught his shoulder and immediately regretted touching him. His body went still beneath her hand. So did hers. For one charged moment, neither moved. Then he looked at the fingers pressed against his shirt. "You saved me. I stabilized you. You brought back my pulse." It seemed rude to let it leave. His eyes lifted to hers. The corner of his mouth did not move, but something changed in his expression. "Does humor help when you're frightened?" "No, distance does." She removed her hand. Dante glanced toward the glass walls and the armed men beyond them. "This is your home? It is my research station. You sleep here. That is none of your concern. Everything connected to last night is now my concern." "No." His gaze sharpened. Most people must have stepped backward when he looked at them that way. Elara folded her arms. "You were poisoned at someone else's dinner, brought onto my property by armed strangers, and treated with a compound no one else has. You are alive because I made a decision. That does not make my life yours." Silence stretched between them. Enzo looked as though he expected blood. Dante merely studied her. "You are correct," he said. It was not the response she expected. He sat back on the cot, pale but composed. "Tell me about the poison." Elara showed him the preserved fragments his doctor had removed from beneath Dante's tongue. The toxin came from aconitine derivatives, but it was modified with an alkaloid unique to Widow's Bell. Whoever prepared it had access to a very old botanical source or advanced research. "Could the poison be traced to your plants?" "Yes." Enzo's hand moved toward his weapon again. Elara ignored him. "But these samples did not come from my collection. Mine have a cultivated genetic marker. This strain is wild." Dante's eyes narrowed. "The species is extinct. In Switzerland, officially. Unofficially, my former mentor believed a hidden colony survived near the Italian border. He vanished before he could prove it." "When?" 6 years ago." Dante looked at Enzo. Something passed between them. "What?" Elara demanded. Dante's voice lowered. "My mother died 6 years ago." Elara's arms fell slowly to her sides. "From what?" "Heart failure." "Was there an autopsy?" "No." "Why not?" "Because my father controlled the body, the doctors, and the truth." The wind pressed snow against the glass. For the first time, Dante did not look like a mafia boss. He looked like a son who had spent 6 years standing beside a locked door. "My mentor's name was Adrian Keller," Elara said. "He was researching the Widow's Bell before he disappeared." Dante's expression changed. "I know that name." "How?" He attended my mother's funeral. By noon, Dante was strong enough to leave. Elara expected relief. Instead, as his convoy disappeared down the mountain, unease settled through the conservatory. At sunset, she found a black envelope beneath the western door. Inside was a photograph of herself sleeping beneath the jasmine balcony, taken from outside the glass. On the back, someone had written, "You should have let him die." Elara dropped the photograph. The conservatory no longer felt sealed. She called Mara first. No answer. She called the village police. The line went dead before anyone spoke. Then headlights appeared through the snow. 3 black SUVs climbed the mountain road. Elara ran to the laboratory and locked the inner doors. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the keys twice. Men emerged from the vehicles. Dante stepped from the center SUV. He wore a black overcoat and no visible weapon. Enzo followed him with 6 armed guards. Elara stayed behind the glass. Dante stopped outside the western doors. "Open it." "No." His gaze moved to the photograph on the floor. His face became still in a way that frightened her more than anger. "Were you harmed?" "No." "Where is your assistant?" "I don't know. We found her car abandoned near the lower road." Elara's stomach collapsed. Dante reached for the door. She backed away so quickly, she struck a table. He stopped. His hand remained inches from the handle. "Elara, you cannot come in. Someone entered your property. You cannot come in. They photographed you while you slept." Her breathing fractured. He saw it. The panic, the way the walls were narrowing, the way his men beyond the glass had become a crowd. Dante turned. "Everyone to the road," he ordered. Enzo hesitated. "Dante, now." The guards withdrew until only Dante remained outside the conservatory. He removed his pistol and placed it on the snow. Then he stepped back from the door. "I will not enter." Elara pressed one hand against the planting table. "Why did you come?" "Because the message was not a threat against you. It had my photograph. It was a message to me. You are not inside it. They know I will return." "And will you?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation. Something tightened beneath her ribs. Dante looked past her at the rows of plants, the hanging lamps, the narrow bed beneath the jasmine balcony. "This place is the only location they cannot easily approach without being seen. It is also my home. I know. You want to turn it into a fortress." "No." "What do you want?" "To keep you alive without making you feel imprisoned." The wind moved between them. Elara had never heard a powerful man speak, as though her fear was not an inconvenience to be defeated. Dante picked up his gun, but did not approach the door. "My men will secure the road. None will enter your gate unless you ask. I will stay outside." "All night?" "Yes." "In the snow?" "I have a car." "This is absurd. I have been called worse. You were almost killed yesterday, and you are in danger because you prevented it. That does not make you responsible for me. It does to me." He turned toward the black SUV. Elara watched him walk away. "Don't you?" He stopped. It was the first time she had used his name. He looked back. "Why did your mother know my mentor?" His expression became unreadable. "That," he said, "is why someone wants both of us silent." That night, Elara tried to sleep. She could not. Every sound against the glass made her sit upright. At midnight, she crossed the conservatory barefoot and looked outside. The black SUV stood beneath the pines, engine running. Dante sat in the driver's seat alone. At 1, he was still there. At 3, snow covered the hood and roof. He remained awake, one hand resting near the pistol in his lap. At 4, Elara opened the inner vent and placed a thermos of coffee in the service hatch. She retreated before he approached. Minutes later, he took it. In the morning, the thermos returned. A small note had been placed beneath it. Too bitter, Elara stared at the words. Then, against her will, she smiled. The second night, he returned. The third night, he returned again. He never asked to enter. During the day, Dante investigated. At night, he parked beneath the snow and guarded the conservatory. Sometimes, Enzo brought him documents. Sometimes, black sedans approached, and men spoke to him through lowered windows. Sometimes, Dante disappeared before dawn and returned with blood on his cuffs. Elara did not ask whose. On the fourth night, she left soup in the service hatch. The bowl returned empty. A note beneath it read, "Too much salt." The next night, she deliberately added more. His reply came at dawn, "You are vindictive." She wrote beneath it, "You are alive." Their conversations began through glass. Dante would stand outside the western doors, while Elara remained within. He told her Mara had been found alive in a hotel near Montreux, drugged but unharmed. Someone had used her phone to access Elara's research files. Elara showed him the missing data. The stolen files concern the widow's bell? Yes. Its extraction process and antidote. Could your work be weaponized? Any medical research can be weaponized. Can it kill without detection? If refined properly. Dante's expression hardened. How many people could produce it? With my notes? Perhaps 5. Name them. No. His gaze cooled. You are protecting someone. I am protecting science from your methods. My methods are why you are still alive. Your methods are why men are hunting me. He stepped closer to the glass. And your antidote is why I am standing here. The accusation struck more deeply than she expected. Dante saw it. He looked away first. I should not have said that. No. You should have. You meant it. I meant that our lives are connected now. Not that you caused this. You don't believe in innocent connections. No. Then what do you believe in? Leverage. Loyalty. Consequence. And plants? His eyes returned to hers. I am beginning to distrust them. She almost smiled. Then, headlights appeared at the bottom of the road. Dante's expression changed instantly. He turned and raised his weapon. A silver vehicle approached slowly and stopped outside the gate. A man stepped out. He was handsome in the polished, forgettable way of diplomats. Blonde hair, expensive coat, ungloved hands. Elara's blood went cold. "Dr. Voss," he called. "It has been a long time." Dante looked through the glass at her. "You know him. Sebastian Keller, her former mentor's son, the man Elara had once almost married." Sebastian raised both hands. "I came alone. No one comes alone," Dante said. Sebastian's gaze shifted toward him. "So the rumors are true. The great Dante Moretti is sleeping in a car for a woman who won't open the door." Dante's weapon remained steady. Elara forced herself toward the service speaker. "What are you doing here?" Sebastian looked at the conservatory. His expression softened with practiced familiarity. "I heard someone attacked you. I came to take you somewhere safe." "I am safe. With him? He has not crossed my gate. He brought the war to your mountain." Dante's jaw tightened. Sebastian stepped closer. "Elara, my father disappeared because of the Morettis." Dante looked at her. She did not look away from Sebastian. "You told me Adrian vanished during field research. I told you what I was allowed to tell you." "Allowed by whom?" Sebastian's eyes moved toward Dante. "His mother." The snow seemed to stop. Dante lowered his gun by an inch. "What did you say?" "My father worked for Isabella Moretti. He was trying to prove someone inside your family had developed a botanical poison. Then your mother died, and my father vanished 3 weeks later." Dante walked toward him. "Who inside my family?" Sebastian smiled without warmth. "That information is not free." Dante reached him in 3 strides. He seized Sebastian by the throat and slammed him against the silver car. Elara's breath caught. Dante did not shout. He leaned close, calm, and lethal. "You came onto her mountain carrying a secret about my mother. That was either courage or stupidity. I will decide which after you answer." Sebastian looked through the glass at Elara. "Ask him why your assistant was found alive," he gasped. "Ask why every attacker has missed you." Dante's fingers tightened. "What are you implying?" Elara demanded. "That this is controlled danger. Someone wants you frightened, not dead." "Who?" Sebastian's eyes remained on her. "Someone who needs you dependent on him." Silence struck the mountain. Elara looked at Dante. His face revealed nothing, but doubt entered before she could stop it. Dante saw. He released Sebastian as if the man had suddenly become unworthy of touch. "Leave," Dante said. Sebastian coughed, straightening his collar. "Elara, come with me." "No, you cannot trust him. I do not trust you either." Pain flickered across Sebastian's face, but it vanished quickly. He placed a small metal case in the snow near the gate. "My father left this for you. He said you would know when to open it." Then he returned to his car. Dante did not stop him. The silver vehicle disappeared down the mountain. For a long time, neither Dante nor Elara spoke. The metal case remained between them in the snow. Finally, Dante turned toward the conservatory. "You think I arranged the attacks? I think I know almost nothing about your world. You know I stayed outside. That does not prove why." His expression went still. "No." She hated the hurt she saw there because it made her want to comfort a man capable of breaking another person's neck with one hand. "Don't you? You should open the case." He picked it up, carried it to the service hatch, and placed it inside without touching the inner handle. Then he walked back to his SUV. That night, he stayed farther from the glass. The case contained a dried widow's bell flower, a cassette recorder, and a brass key. Elara played the tape in her laboratory. Adrian Keller's voice emerged through static. "Elara, if you are hearing this, then I failed to return." Her knees weakened. She sat beside the recorder. The widow's bell is not extinct. Isabella Moretti found it growing beneath the ruins of a monastery near the Italian border. She believed someone inside the Moretti organization was using it to murder political enemies and disguise the deaths as natural heart failure. The tape crackled. I helped her collect evidence. Before we could expose the person responsible, Isabella was poisoned. I continued alone. That was my mistake. Elara looked through the glass. Dante sat beneath the snow, face turned toward the woods. Adrian's voice continued. "The formula requires 2 parts. The toxin and the stabilizer. I destroyed my notes for the stabilizer, but years later, without knowing what I had done, I taught the underlying chemistry to my most gifted student." Elara closed her eyes. "You..." "Elara," her hand tightened around the recorder. "If they find you, they may try to frighten you into completing the compound. Trust no one connected to the Moretti family, not even the ones who appear to protect you." The tape ended. Elara remained still for several minutes. Then she went to the western doors. Dante saw her and approached. She held the recorder between them. "My mentor said not to trust you." Dante's gaze settled on the cassette. "A reasonable man? He said your mother discovered the poison. I believe him. He said someone in your family killed her. I believe that too. He said I know how to complete the formula." Dante's face changed. Not surprise. Recognition. "You knew," she whispered. "I suspected." "How long?" "Since the night you saved me." Her stomach turned. "You came back because of my research." "I came back because someone photographed you sleeping. But you stayed because I am useful." At first, the honesty hurt more than a lie. Elara stepped away from the glass. Dante placed his palm against it. She stared at his hand. "I was leverage." "Yes." "Am I still?" His answer took too long. "Elara, am I still leverage? To everyone else?" "That is not what I asked." Dante lowered his hand. The mountain wind moved around him. "No," he said. "You are no longer leverage to me." "What am I?" His eyes held hers through the glass. "The reason I have not slept in 2 weeks." The words entered quietly, dangerously. Elara looked away first. "That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." The following morning, she found blood beside the service hatch. Dante was gone. His SUV remained beneath the trees, driver's door open. A trail of footprints led toward the lower road. Elara called his phone. No answer. She called Enzo. The line connected on the 6th ring. "Where is he?" "A pause. Inside the Moretti estate in Milan. He left his car here. He was taken." The conservatory tilted around her. "By whom?" "We do not know." "That is a lie." "Elara, tell me." Enzo exhaled. "Lucien Valeri." She knew the name. Dante's consigliere. The man whose photograph appeared beside him in business reports and charity galas. the man described as Dante's oldest friend. Why would his own advisor take him? Because Lucien handled the security at Chateau Aveline the night Dante was poisoned. Elara gripped the phone. He was inside the investigation. He controlled it. And you trusted him? Dante trusted him. Past tense, what does Lucien want? You. The answer was almost too simple. He wants the stabilizer. Dante refused to bring you to him. Elara looked at the empty SUV. We're in Milan. No. Enzo. Dante gave me one order if this happened. Keep you inside that conservatory. He is alive because I ignored safety once. He is alive because you saved him. Do not turn that miracle into his weakness. The call ended. Elara stood beneath the glass dome, surrounded by plants that had always made sense. Stay rooted. Withdraw. Survive winter by becoming invisible. But Dante had remained outside for 14 nights because he understood that crossing her boundary would destroy the safety he wanted to preserve. Now he was in danger because he had refused to drag her from it. Elara looked at the western doors. Her hands began to shake before she touched them. She had not gone beyond the upper garden in 11 months. She had not entered a city in 3 years. She could not cross a crowded room without feeling the dead weight of bodies around her. But fear was not the same as incapacity. Plants taught that too. Some seeds required fire before they opened. At noon, Enzo arrived to find Elara standing outside the conservatory in a grey coat. Snow moved around her boots. Her face was white. Her breath came too quickly, but she was outside. Enzo stopped 10 feet away. Dante will kill me. Then make sure he survives long enough to try. The flight to Milan was private. The airport terminal was not. Even through the secure entrance, there were too many people, security personnel, pilots, assistants, strangers moving with luggage. Elara's chest tightened, sound blurred. The floor shifted beneath her. Enzo reached toward her. She recoiled. He stopped immediately. Tell me what to do. The question steadied her. Not an order, not a touch, a choice. Stand on my left. Do not let anyone approach from behind. Enzo obeyed. She counted breaths until they reached the plain. Milan spread beneath them after dark, gold and black. Elegant as a weapon laid on velvet, Lucien held Dante inside Palazzo Moretti, the family residence where Dante had grown up. Loyal guards had been replaced. Communications were controlled. Lucien had announced that Dante was ill and temporarily unable to lead. A bloodless coup. For now, the brass key from Adrian's case. Elara said. What does it open? Enzo placed a photograph on the table. A ruined monastery north of Lake Como. Isabella Moretti maintained a hidden laboratory beneath the chapel. Adrian helped build it. Lucien knows. He knows the laboratory exists. He does not have the key. Then that is what he wants. He wants both the key and you. Elara looked out the window at the lights below. Give him both. Enzo's expression hardened. No, he will bring Dante to the monastery if he believes I can complete the formula. He will kill you when you do. Then we make sure I don't. The plan was dangerous enough that Dante would have forbidden it. That was partly why it worked. Lucien agreed to the exchange immediately. At midnight, black cars carried Elara toward the monastery. The ruins stood above a frozen lake, their broken bell tower cutting into the stormy sky. Armed men waited beneath floodlights. Snow collected on ancient statues whose faces had been erased by weather. Lucien Valeri stood at the chapel entrance. He was in his early 40s, elegant and composed, wearing a dark wool coat over a tuxedo as though he had left a gala rather than overthrown a criminal empire. Dr. Voss. His voice was warm. That frightened her. You have something that belongs to me. The key belongs to Adrian Keller. Adrian was a sentimental thief. And you killed him? Lucien smiled faintly. No. Isabella did. Elara's pulse stumbled. She discovered he had kept copies of their work. She feared he would expose her. That is not what the tape said. Dead men shape stories to flatter themselves. Where is Dante? Lucien gestured toward the chapel. Inside, beneath shattered frescoes and candles placed along the aisle, Dante sat tied to a wooden chair. Blood marked his temple. His white shirt was open at the throat. One hand trembled against the rope around his wrist. When he saw Elara, something terrible moved through his face. Not relief, fury. No. His voice echoed through the chapel. Lucien watched them with interest. She left the conservatory for you, he said. Do you understand what that means? Dante's gaze never left her. You should not be here. I know. You crossed a city. I know. Go back. Lucien laughed softly. She cannot. Elara walked down the aisle. Each armed man she passed became another body too close, another obstacle between her and air. Her vision tightened. Panic clawed at her ribs. Dante saw. His anger vanished beneath concern. Elara, look at me. She did. Not them, he said. Only me. Her steps slowed. Breathe. She inhaled. The chapel remained. Again, she reached him. Lucien came behind her. The key. Elara held it out. He took it. Then he touched the back of her neck. Dante surged against the rope so violently the chair legs scraped across stone. Remove your hand. Lucien's fingers remained where they were. You spent years pretending nothing could reach you, he said. Now a woman who sleeps beneath flowers has turned you into a threat everyone can see. Dante's voice lowered. If you touch her again, there will not be enough of you left to bury. Lucien removed his hand, still dramatic when powerless. He led them beneath the chapel. The brass key opened a steel door, concealed behind the altar. Stone steps descended into a laboratory preserved in darkness. Glass cabinets lined the walls. Dried botanical samples hung beneath wax seals. At the center stood a long table containing Isabella Moretti's notes. Elara approached them. The handwriting was precise. The formula described the widow's bell toxin, but the final stabilizing sequence was incomplete. A photograph lay beneath the papers. Isabella Moretti stood beside Adrian Keller in the conservatory in Valence. Elara's conservatory. Decades younger, the glass bright behind them. On Isabella's other side stood a boy of perhaps 12. Dante. His hand was bandaged, his expression already guarded. Elara looked at him. His face had gone pale. You were there. I don't remember. Lucien closed the laboratory door. You remember more than you admit. Dante's tremor worsened. Lucien noticed and smiled. Tell her. Dante said nothing. Lucien turned to Elara. When Dante was 12, his father decided fear had made him weak. So he gave the boy a small dose of widow's bell and locked him in that conservatory overnight. Elara's stomach twisted. His mother found him before dawn. Adrian helped save him. The nerve damage never fully healed. Dante's eyes went cold. Lucien, the tremor, Elara whispered. He looked away. Lucien moved toward Isabella's notebooks. His father used poison to train obedience. His mother secretly studied it to create an antidote. But Isabella discovered something more useful. A refined version could remove enemies without war. You said she opposed it, Elara said. She opposed her husband controlling it. Lucien opened another file. Inside were names, dates, and medical reports. Dozens of deaths, judges, politicians, rival leaders. Isabella was no innocent woman, Lucien said. She was building a new empire. Adrian learned the truth and tried to flee with the formula. She had him killed. Dante stared at the files. You are lying. I watched her give the order. You were 19. I was her courier. The revelation settled across the laboratory. Lucien's voice softened. She promised to raise me beside you, to make us brothers. Instead, when your father discovered her plans, she blamed me. He tortured my family for information. My father died believing I had betrayed him. Dante's face became unreadable. So you poisoned my mother. I gave her what she had given others. And Adrian? And Adrian? And Adrian? And Adrian? He escaped. For a while. I found him years later. Elara's hands curled. You killed him. He would not give me the stabilizer. So you watched me. For 6 years. The words froze the air. The research grants. Elara whispered. The anonymous donations. Mine. The replacement glass. After the storm. Mine. Mara's employment application. Mine. Every layer of Elara's private life shifted. The conservatory she believed she had rebuilt alone had been quietly observed, funded, and shaped by a man waiting for her to complete a weapon. Lucian smiled gently. You were never hidden, Dr. Voss. You were cultivated. Her vision blurred. Dante strained against the ropes. Do not listen to him. He put people around me. He is trying to break your sense of safety. It was never safe. Yes, it was. She looked at Dante. How? Because it was yours. The answer landed with quiet force. Not because no one watched, not because danger could not reach it, because the boundary belonged to her. Lucian's patience thinned. Complete the formula. No. He removed a small pistol and pressed it against Dante's chest. Elara's body went still. Complete it. Dante looked at her. Do not. Lucian chambered around. He will, Dee. He may kill me afterward. He will. Lucian smiled. At least one of you understands. Elara turned toward the laboratory table. Her hands trembled as she opened the cases. She examined the compounds. Widow's bell extract, binding salts, neurostabilizers, the pieces of a poison that had haunted Dante since childhood and shaped the death of everyone connected to it. She began mixing. Dante watched her. Elara. She did not look up. You told me you would never use your work to kill. I am trying to keep you alive. At what cost? The same cost you accepted every night outside my door. His eyes darkened. That was different. No. You were afraid and stayed anyway. I was not afraid. You are always afraid. Lucian glanced at Dante. Elara continued quietly. You are afraid anyone you trust will become a weapon. You are afraid love is only another form of control. You are afraid if you sleep, someone will choose your life for you again. Dante's jaw tightened. And you, she said, are asking me not to act because you are terrified of what it means that I came. The laboratory fell silent. Dante looked at her with the expression of a man stripped of every defense except honesty. Yes, he said. The word barely carried. I am terrified. Do me. Lucian's gaze sharpened with satisfaction. Elara mixed the final compound. The liquid turned clear. Lucian stepped forward. Is that it? Yes. He took the vial. Demonstrate. On whom? Lucian looked toward Dante. Elara's blood chilled. No. You claim it is complete. Prove it. Dante's voice became calm. Do it. She stared at him. Elara. No. If he gives it to you, I will tear this room apart before it reaches your blood. You are tied to a chair. Then I will break the chair. Lucian smiled. That is the Dante I remember. He handed Elara the syringe. Her fingers closed around it. Dante held her jazz. She approached. At the last second, she drove the needle into his arm. His eyes widened. Betrayal flashed across his face. Then, his body seized. The chair crashed onto its side. Elara! Lucian shouted. Dante convulsed against the stone floor. Lucian stared in fascination. How long? 40 seconds. To death? To paralysis. Lucian turned toward the formula. Elara moved. She smashed the vial against his face. The liquid struck his eyes. Lucian screamed. Elara dropped beside Dante and cut the ropes with a shard of glass she had hidden beneath her sleeve. His body remained rigid. His eyes found hers. Not poison, she whispered. Temporary nerve blockade. Gunfire erupted beyond the laboratory door. Enzo. The lights died. Emergency lamps flooded the room red. Lucian fired blindly. A bullet struck the table inches from Elara's head. Dante's fingers moved, then his arm. The paralysis was already fading. Lucian seized Elara by the hair and dragged her backward. Dante rose from the floor with murder in his eyes. His body still trembled, but not from weakness. Let her go. Lucian pressed the gun beneath her jaw. You cannot protect everyone. No? Dante said. Only her. He stepped closer. Lucian fired. Dante turned, taking the bullet through his shoulder. Elara screamed. He did not fall. He crossed the distance and struck Lucien hard enough to break the man's grip. The pistol skidded beneath the table. Lucien drove a knife into Dante's side. Dante caught his wrist. The two men crashed into the glass cabinets. Dried flowers and antique bottles exploded around them. Elara crawled toward the fallen gun. Lucien saw. He kicked Dante backward and lunged for her. Elara seized a metal tray and struck him across the face. He staggered. Dante drove him against the central table. His hand closed around Lucien's throat. Blood ran down Dante's side. Lucien smiled through broken teeth. You think she loves you because you sat in the snow? Dante tightened his grip. No. His gaze moved to Elara. I think she came through a crowd. Then he threw Lucien through the glass partition. The man fell onto the lower platform among shattered specimens. He did not rise. Gunfire ceased outside. Enzo entered with armed men. Don't she? Burn it. Enzo stared at the laboratory. The records, everything. This is your mother's history. It is her weapon. Dante looked at Elara. No one uses her work again. Flames moved through the underground laboratory before dawn. Elara and Dante emerged from the ruined chapel as smoke climbed into the snow. He could barely walk. She held his arm around her shoulders. Men surrounded them, but for once, the bodies did not close the world. She saw only Dante. At the edge of the frozen lake, he stopped. You left your conservatory. You noticed. You crossed an airport. Yes, you walked into a building full of armed men. I was there. His face tightened with pain. You should never have had to do that for me. She looked at the blood soaking his shirt. You stayed outside for 14 nights. I had an armored car. You sat in the snow when the bullets came. The car door was too far away. Despite everything, a breath of laughter escaped her. Dante stared at her as though the sound had entered somewhere dangerous. His hand rose toward her face. He stopped inches from her cheek. The old restraint, the boundary. Elara closed the distance herself. She pressed her face into his palm. His eyes closed. For one moment, the most feared man in Europe stood wounded beneath a burning monastery and touched her as though tenderness were the most dangerous act he had ever committed. Then the mountain cracked with an explosion behind them. Dante pulled her against his chest and shielded her as fire burst through the chapel windows. The force threw them into the snow. When Elara opened her eyes, Dante lay above her, blood on his mouth. Don't you? He did not answer. The hospital in Zurich occupied the private upper floor of a building overlooking the lake. Elara hated every part of it. The elevators, the voices, the footsteps beyond the door, the smell of antiseptic beneath too many strangers. Dante remained unconscious for 31 hours. She stayed beside him. Enzo arranged for the entire corridor to be cleared. Nurses entered one at a time and announced themselves before opening the door. No one touched Elara. Dante had given those orders months earlier for people in safe houses. Enzo adapted them for her without being asked. On the second night, Dante woke. Elara sat asleep in a chair beside the window, her hand resting near his on the bed. His fingers moved. The tremor touched the sheet. Elara opened her eyes. You are terrible at dying. His voice was rough. You poisoned me. Temporarily. You did not mention that detail. Lucien was listening. I believed you had betrayed me. Pain moved through her. I know. For 3 seconds. I know. They were unpleasant. She looked down. Dante turned his hand until his fingers touched hers. Why are you still here? Because you cannot sit outside the hospital in this condition. That has not stopped me before. Your shoulder is stitched closed. A temporary inconvenience. You were stabbed. Also temporary. You are impossible. His fingers curled around hers. And you came for me. She tried to pull away. He held her. Not hard. Enough. I need you to understand something. He said. You are medicated. I have never been clearer. That is what medicated men say. Elara, the calm intensity in his voice, stopped her. I returned to the conservatory because you were useful. I stayed because leaving became impossible. Her throat tightened. You don't know how to love someone. No, that is not reassuring. I know how to protect what is mine. I am not yours. No, The answer surprised her. Dante's thumb moved once against her fingers. You are not a territory, not leverage, not something I can own because I bled for it. His eyes held hers. You are the first person who has ever made me want to stand at a door and wait until I am invited. Elara could not breathe for a different reason now. What happens if I never invite you? I remain outside. For how long? As long as the lights are on. Tears burned behind her eyes. She looked toward the lake. Lucien said the conservatory was never safe. He was wrong. He had watched me for years. Safety is not the absence of danger. Then what is it? Choice. Dante's fingers tightened gently. You chose who entered. You chose when to leave. You chose to come for me. No one can take those choices without becoming my enemy. She looked back at him. And if I choose to leave you? Something dark and wounded moved through his face. I will make certain you are safe. That is not what I asked. His jaw tightened. I will survive it. Would you? No. The honesty broke something open. Elara leaned forward and kissed him. It was not gentle at first. It carried the terror of the chapel, the 14 nights beneath the snow, the photograph through the glass, the bullet through his shoulder, and every word they had stopped before saying. Dante went still. For 1 second, he did not touch her. Then his hand rose to the back of her neck. Careful, controlled. He kissed her as though restraint were the last wall between devotion and ruin. When she pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. You should know, he said quietly, that I am not reasonable where you are concerned. I had noticed. I may become worse. You almost broke a chair while paralyzed. It was an inferior chair. A small laugh escaped her. Dante looked at her with something close to wonder. Then footsteps sounded beyond the door. Elara tensed. I felt it. His expression changed instantly. The door opened. A nurse entered with Enzo. Behind them stood Sebastian Keller. Elara rose. What is he doing here? Sebastian looked exhausted. His coat was wrinkled, his face bruised. I brought evidence. Enzo placed a file on the table. Sebastian has been working with Interpol. Dante's gaze sharpened. Convenient. Sebastian ignored him. Lucien survived the fall. Elara's blood chilled. He was extracted through a service tunnel before the fire reached the lower chamber. Several Valeri loyalists escaped with him. Dante pushed himself upright despite the pain. Where? We don't know. But he lost the formula, Elara said. Sebastian looked at her. He has your blood samples. She went still. The hospital in Valence. After the first attack, someone entered the local clinic using forged authorization. They took archived blood from your annual medical screening. What can he do with it? Develop a compound tailored to your metabolism. Dante's face became lethal. Sebastian continued. Lucien does not need the old formula anymore. He needs you alive long enough to reproduce it. Dante reached for the call button. Elara is leaving Switzerland tonight. No, she said. His gaze snapped to her. No, I am not running from one glass house to another. This is not a discussion. It became one the moment you said I had choices. That was before I learned a man who wants to harvest your blood is alive. You don't get to respect my autonomy only when it is convenient. Dante's jaw hardened. Enzo looked toward the ceiling. Sebastian almost smiled. Dante noticed. Leave the room. Sebastian's smile vanished. When the door closed, Dante turned back to Elara. Lucien will come for you. Yes, he will use crowds because he knows they disable you. Then we prepare for crowds. You cannot train away trauma in an afternoon. No, but I can stop treating fear like prophecy. Dante stared at her. She took his hand. The conservatory was my shelter, then it became my cage. You never forced the door open. That is why I was able to walk through it. His expression shifted. I will not let him use you as bait. I am already bait. No, Dante, listen to me. He believes my blood completes the formula. He believes I am frightened enough to return to the only place I feel safe. Understanding entered his face. The conservatory. He will come there. Then we destroy it. Elara's fingers went cold. Dante saw. I should not have said that. No, the idea hurt because it was possible. Every plant, every restored arch, every pane she had replaced with her own hands, her refuge, her prison, her life. What if we let him believe it is empty? She said. Dante studied here. Then he understood. 3 nights later, the conservatory glowed above the valley beneath a clear, frozen sky. From the mountain road, nothing seemed changed. Lamps burned beneath the dome. Orchids moved gently in artificial warmth. A woman's silhouette crossed the upper gallery. Dante's black SUV stood beneath the pines, but Elara was not inside. She waited in the abandoned gardener's cottage 50 yards uphill, watching the conservatory through hidden cameras. Dante sat beside her. His shoulder remained bandaged. His left hand trembled lightly, but the pistol in his right was steady. You should be farther away, he said. So should you. I am working. Soigny, you are a botanist. You are technically a hotel owner. His eyes narrowed. She looked back at the monitors. At 1:43 a.m., movement appeared beyond the eastern wall. 6 men emerged from the forest. A 7th approached the service hatch. Lucien entered last. His face bore scars from the shattered glass. One eye had clouded white. He moved with a cane. Where is she? He asked through a hidden microphone. The silhouette on the upper gallery continued moving. A projection. Lucien smiled. He placed one hand against the western doors. Elara, Dante's entire body tightened beside her. Wait, she whispered. Lucien unlocked the service entrance using a copied key. His men entered. The moment all 7 crossed the threshold, Dante pressed the security control. Steel shutters dropped over every exit. Gas vents opened beneath the planting tables. Lucien looked upward. A pale mist filled the conservatory. His men raised their weapons. What is this? One shouted. Elara activated the speaker. Pollen. Lucien turned toward the cameras. Her voice carried through the glass house. Non-lethal, unless combined with the compound already on your gloves. Lucien looked down. Earlier that night, Enzo's men had contaminated the weapons supplied by a Valeri contact. Elara continued. You wanted a poison that could be tailored to one person. I gave you one. Lucien's men began collapsing, not dying, paralyzed. Lucien remained standing. He had anticipated betrayal and worn protective gloves beneath his leather ones. Dante saw it. He is not affected. Lucien pulled a detonator from his coat. The conservatory cameras shook. He planted explosives, Elara whispered. Lucien looked directly toward the hidden camera. You built your prison beautifully, Doctor. He pressed the button. The eastern wing exploded. Glass and fire rose into the night. Dante threw Elara to the cottage floor as the shockwave struck. The monitors went dark. For a moment, there was only ringing silence. Then, Elara heard herself screaming, not because she was hurt, because the conservatory was burning. Dante held her shoulders. Elara, look at me. My plants. Look at me. The western wing. We have to move. She stared through the cottage window. Flames climbed the iron arches. Years of work vanished in orange light. Then, a figure emerged from the burning western doors. Lucien. He staggered into the snow, coat aflame, pistol in hand. He fired toward the cottage. Dante pushed Elara behind the stone wall and returned fire. Lucien disappeared into the trees. Dante followed. No! Elara shouted. He stopped only long enough to look back. Stay here. That is what everyone keeps telling me. Elara, she seized the emergency flare gun from the supply cabinet. I know this mountain better than both of you. They entered the forest together. Snow reflected the conservatory fire, turning the trees red. Lucien's tracks led toward the old cable bridge above the ravine. Blood marked the snow beside them. At the bridge, they found him waiting. He held Enzo at gunpoint. Enzo had blood on his face, and one arm hanging uselessly. Dante raised his weapon. Lucien pressed the muzzle beneath Enzo's jaw. You always arrive for the wrong person, Lucien said. Release him. Drop the gun. Dante obeyed. Elara's pulse pounded. Below them, the ravine disappeared into darkness. Lucien looked at her. The fire will destroy your work. You never understood my work. I watched you build it. You watched the building, not the reason. His clouded eye narrowed. Elara took one step onto the bridge. Dante's voice sharpened. Stop, she continued. The stabilizer was never in my notes. Lucian's grip on Enzo tightened. Where is it? In the living plant. The conservatory is burning. One specimen was removed. Hope entered his ruined face. Where? Elara raised the flare gun. Behind you. Lucian turned instinctively. Enzo drove his elbow backward. The gun fired. Dante Lunget. All three men crashed against the bridge railing. Old cables screamed. Lucian fell halfway over the edge, one hand catching the railing. Dante seized his wrist. For one suspended moment, enemies hung above the ravine. Lucian looked up at him. You cannot let go, he gasped. She will see what you are. Dante's face remained cold. Elara stepped beside him. Lucian looked at her. Tell him. She understood. He wanted her to command death, so Dante would become the monster Lucian believed him to be. Dante's grip began to slip. Lucian smiled. You need me alive. No, Elara said. Dante looked at her. She lowered the flare gun. But we are not you. Together, Dante and Enzo dragged Lucian onto the bridge. Enzo cuffed him. Lucian laughed breathlessly. Mercy will destroy you. Dante looked toward the burning conservatory. No, she will rebuild me. By sunrise, the fire was out. Half the conservatory had collapsed. The eastern laboratory was gone. The upper balcony had fallen. Blackened iron ribs rose beneath the pale morning sky. Elara stood beyond the gate. Smoke moved around the remains of her former life. Dante stayed several feet behind her. He did not touch her, not until she turned. I don't know where to go, she said. His expression softened in the smallest way. Anywhere. That is not helpful. You can stay at any property I own. That sounds like a threat. One has a library. No. One has a private lake. No. One has no employees within 2 kilometers. She almost smiled. No. Dante looked at the ruins. Then we rebuild. Elara's throat tightened. It will never be the same. No. The old glass was handmade. We will find glassmakers. The orchids are gone. We will find more. Some took years to flower. Then I will wait. She looked at him. Snow melted in his dark hair. Blood marked the edge of his bandage. How long? His eyes held hers. As long as the lights are on. 6 months later, the conservatory stood again. Not identical. Stronger. The original black iron arches remained wherever the fire had spared them. New glass rose between them, clear and bright. The laboratory had been relocated underground, behind reinforced doors. The Western Gallery now held restored orchids collected from conservatories across Europe. Elara had not returned to living entirely inside. She kept a small apartment in the village and walked there twice a week. Some days, she made it without stopping. Some days, panic forced her back. Dante never called either outcome failure. Lucian Valeri remained imprisoned in a private location known to very few people. Evidence from Isabella's laboratory dismantled a network of poisonings that had reached across Europe for decades. Sebastian returned to Interpol. Enzo complained that retirement had become impossible. Mara resumed work beneath strict security protocols and declared Dante's coffee taste emotionally damaged. The Moretti empire changed. Certain businesses disappeared. Certain men resigned after private conversations. Dante remained feared. He did not become gentle to the world, only more precise about where violence belonged. One winter evening, Elara finished transplanting the first widow's bell specimen, grown from seeds she had stored outside the conservatory before the fire. Snow began falling beyond the glass. She looked toward the western doors. A black SUV stood beneath the pines. Dante sat inside. Elara stared in disbelief. She opened the door and stepped into the snow. What are you doing? He lowered the window. Watching the road. You have a security team? Yes. You live here now. Technically, I live in the guest house. You sleep in my bed. Frequently. Then why are you sitting outside? His expression remained serious. You closed the laboratory door. I was handling a dangerous specimen. You asked not to be disturbed. So you came out here? I understand boundaries. You are absurd. You saved my life. You mention that often. It remains significant. She opened the passenger door and climbed inside. Warm air surrounded her. Dante watched her settle beside him. You hate cars in enclosed weather? I hate many things. I still do some of them. He took her cold hand and placed it beneath his coat, against his chest. His heartbeat was steady. The tremor in his fingers remained. It always would. Elara had stopped trying to cure every scar. Some wounds were not failures of medicine. They were evidence of survival. Through the windshield, the restored conservatory glowed beneath the snowfall. Warm light moved across leaves and iron. It no longer looked like a prison, it looked like a choice. Dante reached into his coat and removed a small velvet box. Elara stared at it. No, you have not seen what is inside. It is a box. Excellent observation. Don't you? He opened it. Inside was not a diamond. It was an old brass key, cleaned and restored. The original western door key, he said. Recovered after the fire. She touched it. I thought it melted. Enzo found it beneath the stone threshold. Dante placed the key in her palm. I do not want ownership of your door. Her eyes lifted to his. I want you to know that whether it is open or closed, I will be on the side you choose. Tears gathered before she could stop them. This is a terrible proposal. I have not proposed. You brought a velvet box. Enzo insisted. He is sentimental. He is a menace. Elara closed her fingers around the key. What were you planning to ask? For the first time since she had known him, Dante Moretti looked uncertain, not frightened of guns, not frightened of rivals, frightened of her answer. I was going to ask whether I may keep waiting. She leaned toward him. For what? For every door you have not opened yet. Her forehead touched his. Outside, snow covered the mountain road. Inside the glass house, the widow's bell lifted its first violet flower toward the light. Elara kissed him slowly. Then she took his hand, stepped from the SUV, and led him toward the conservatory. At the western entrance, she placed the brass key in the lock. Dante stopped behind her, waiting, always waiting. Elara opened the door. Warm golden light spilled across the snow. This time, when she looked back, there was no fear in the space between them. Come inside, she said, and the man who had conquered cities, frightened governments, and survived a family built on poison crossed the threshold only because she had asked him to. Behind them, the door remained open. Beyond the glass, the storm moved across the Alps. Inside, beneath living leaves and restored iron, Dante wrapped his arms around the woman who had once hidden from the entire world. He did not promise that danger was over. She did not promise that fear would never return. They had learned better than to confuse love with the absence of darkness. Love was the light left burning inside it, and high above the sleeping village, where snow gathered silently across the roof of the rebuilt conservatory, the most feared mafia boss in Europe finally stopped waiting outside. Not because he had forced his way in, because she had become brave enough to open the door, and because he had loved her enough to wait until she did.